My childhood friend was mute. And by coincidence, I happened to know a little sign language. Christian said he wanted quiet and wanted to sit alone. Teacher. Christian said he can't be apart from me. Please let us be seatmates. Christian said he wanted his room to be black, with smaller windows. Auntie. He said he wants floor-to-ceiling windows, pink curtains, and sunlight flooding the whole room. Christian said he hated me. I thought he was just saying the opposite of what he meant. So I stuffed cake into his mouth and said I didn't believe him. Then who do you like? The new transfer student? He glanced at me, shook his head very quickly, then signed to me. Of course not. I don't like that type. I breathed a sigh of relief and started chasing after Christian again, until the day I was on classroom duty and picked up a note he had written to the transfer student. On it, he had written, I only said that because I was afraid she would twist the translation again. Please don't be mad. I like you the most. Can we get into the same university? Later, I realized that leaving a mute person was actually that simple. All I had to do was close my eyes, or just ignore him. Chapter 1. The broom slipped from my hand and fell to the floor. Without thinking, I crumpled the note, then smoothed it out again. Christian had practiced regular script before, so his handwriting was easy to recognize. It was elegant, sharp, and powerful. In my mind, I immediately pictured the light, cheerful smile that would curve at the corners of his lips whenever he wrote. But the moment I remembered these were words he had written to Judy, I suddenly felt completely lost. After all, just an hour ago, I had asked him, why does that new transfer girl follow you around every day? It seems like she kind of likes you. Christian said nothing. His lips pressed tightly together, and his gaze fell behind me. I followed his gaze and saw Judy standing on tiptoe, struggling a little as she wiped the blackboard. Then Christian had already stood up and walked toward the podium. He rolled up his sleeves, wrung out the cloth, and carefully wiped the places she couldn't reach. When he returned to his seat, I changed the blade on my craft knife and pretended to ask casually, do you like her? Christian's lashes were thick and dark, long and delicate enough to make even girls jealous. In those clear eyes of his, there was a trace of helplessness. I don't like her. She's completely not my type. He signed this to me, and I finally relaxed. Without realizing it, the strength in my hand loosened. The blade sliced across my finger. I hissed softly and saw a few beads of blood welling up from the pad of my finger. Christian's expression changed instantly. Without any unnecessary movements, he frowned and gently wiped away the blood that had spilled out. His familiar warmth and scent instantly soothed the restlessness in my heart. I blinked, and a voice in my heart murmured to itself, see? Christian likes me. But now, the note said, I was afraid she would make trouble again and target you. Don't listen to what she says. I only want to get into the same university as you. Chapter 2. I clenched the crumpled note in my pocket until my fingertips hurt. I'd never been the type to swallow my grievances. So I called out to Christian, determined to get an answer. Countless questions jammed in my throat. The words "what did that note you wrote to Judy really mean?" were almost out. Christian paused for a second. He slowly raised his slender fingers and signed something simple. His eyes settled on the band-aid wrapped around my fingertip. His gaze gentle and sincere. Does your finger still hurt? I slapped his hand away, my voice sharper than I intended, letting all the hurt and bitterness I'd been holding back spill out. If you think I'm annoying, just say it. You don't have to keep hiding it. Christian glanced down and noticed the note. There was no panic in his eyes. Instead, a trace of exhaustion surfaced, as if he'd expected I'd get upset over something like this. He signed. That's not what I meant. It's just, Vale. Don't you think we've gotten a little too close? Christian hesitated, as though what he wanted to say next was painfully difficult to put into words. Go on. A bright voice cut in. If you don't tell her, how is she supposed to change? If she's doing something wrong, she should know. Judy had appeared without me noticing. She lightly tapped Christian's shoulder, encouraging him. There it was again, that tone. Instinctively, it made me uncomfortable. I'd always been stubborn. Once I made up my mind about something, I almost never gave up. Just like when I first met Christian, after the accident that took his voice, he'd become withdrawn and quiet. Even when other kids bullied him at school, he never told anyone. I couldn't stand it. Since I was taller than the other kids, I fought a few of them and warned them never to bully Christian again. But afterward, he still let people push him around without fighting back. It drove me crazy. So one day, when the teacher was rearranging seats and asked Christian where he wanted to sit, he stayed silent and signed the number 1. I immediately raised my hand. Teacher, Christian says he can't stand being apart from me for even a second. We should be desk mates forever. Later, during class, the vice principal wrote an advanced math problem on the board and asked if anyone knew how to solve it. I glanced at the pages of calculations covering Christian's notebook. I never understood why he always turned in blank exams, so I helpfully raised my hand again. Teacher, Christian came up with 3 different solutions. After that, Christian was no longer stuck sitting in the corner beside the trash can. During breaks, classmates started coming over to chat with him or ask him questions. The day the vice principal recommended him for the math Olympiad, and he earned a spot at the city's top high school through the special talent program. I was genuinely happy for him. But that afternoon, his eyes were red. He held onto a note all day before quietly handing it to me. It read, "I'll help you study. Let's get into first high together, okay?" His face was bright red, but he stubbornly held my gaze. That was the first time my heart skipped a beat. I thought we felt the same way, until Judy transferred into our class. That day, I kept pestering Christian to go watch the re-release of Interstellar with me. He smiled helplessly and signed that he wanted to go to the library to organize his notes. Like always, I deliberately played dumb. Oh, so we had the same idea. You want to watch Interstellar too, right? I'd done things like this so many times that it never crossed my mind there was anything wrong with it. But Judy frowned slightly. Her eyes settled on me as she said seriously, "Could you please respect him a little? He clearly signed that he wanted to go to the library. Why do you always pretend not to understand what he wants?" The room fell silent. I froze. Me? Not respecting Christian? What was worse, it was as if her words had finally woken Christian up. He nodded at Judy and signed. Thank you. The unspoken understanding I thought we shared. The closeness hidden inside all our teasing. It shattered in an instant. Judy suddenly became the person who taught Christian how to set boundaries. How to say no. Just like now. Under her encouraging gaze, Christian seemed to gather all his courage before slowly signing to me. I think I need some personal space. Chapter 3. After that day, I couldn't stop wondering, was I the villain all along? Maybe Christian really did like black. I was the one who thought he needed more sunshine instead of staying shut inside his room all day. Maybe he genuinely preferred being alone. I was the one who barged into his life without asking. Maybe he never needed me that much. No, Christian was so smart. Maybe even without me, he would have grown into the same brilliant, healthy person he was now. The more I thought about it, the more I sounded like an overbearing, selfish, unreasonable pain who never knew when to leave people alone. I lay on my bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. By the time evening came, a light rain had begun to fall. The damp breeze carried tiny droplets that brushed against my face, their coolness clearing my head a little. Then I suddenly remembered. Today was the day Christian had his rehabilitation appointment. Christian had lost his voice because of an accident. It wasn't permanent. His parents had taken him from one hospital to another. Finally, an elderly doctor with graying hair shook his head and said, "The injury isn't his vocal cords anymore. It's in his heart." He explained that Christian's vocal cords had already recovered. It was the emotional trauma that kept him from speaking. He recommended a psychological rehabilitation center and suggested he go once a month. At first, Christian refused. He signed that he didn't like talking to strangers. I pestered him every day until he finally gave in. "Please go. I'll go to math Olympiad classes with you every week. I really want to hear your voice. You're already so handsome. I bet your voice sounds amazing too. Please?" Once, I caught a bad cold and developed a fever. I took the day off and slept like the dead in the school clinic. When I woke up, Christian was there. He was warming the 4-tube with his hands while watching over me with worried eyes. I asked why he hadn't gone to the rehabilitation center. He shook his head and slowly traced a few words across my palm. "I missed you." Blushing, he signed. "You'll be the very first person to hear my voice." The memory made it impossible for me to stay home any longer. Anxious, yet secretly thrilled, I thought, Christian must be waiting for me. Rainwater coated the asphalt in a glossy sheen. The damp air felt as heavy as soaked cotton. I stood downstairs beneath my umbrella. A cold raindrop slipped down the back of my collar with the wind, making me shiver. Then, in the very next second, I saw Judy touching Christian's Adam's apple. Christian hated physical contact. Or at least, that's what I'd always believed. Not because, when he was little, he was so adorable that all the neighborhood aunties and older girls took turns hugging him, pinching his cheeks, and teasing him. Back then, I was still a chubby kid. None of the other children wanted to play with me. Only Christian did. Whenever we played pretend, he'd always let me be the knight. A knight should be strong, so they can protect the princess. That's what he signed. So, are you the princess? Only a princess could be as pretty as you. Christian's face immediately turned red. Then he proudly lifted his chin. I guess that works. But you have to protect me. We were inseparable. We were so close that Christian's mom would jokingly ask if I'd like to call her mom after we grew up too. Then one day, the beautiful little Christian disappeared. The adults said he had been kidnapped. I was there the day they found him. His whole body was filthy. Only his face was clean. But his eyes were empty. I was overjoyed and rushed over to grab his hand. The instant I touched him, Christian shoved me away with all the strength he had. He screamed at the top of his lungs. Christian's mother dug her fingernails into her palms. Her face was deathly pale as she softly apologized to me. I'm sorry. He went through something terrible. He still has nightmares. Not long afterward, Christian's family moved away. When I saw him again, he couldn't speak anymore. Even when younger kids bullied him, he never fought back. That was the first time in my life my heart actually hurt. Chapter 4. Maybe it was because the Christian from my childhood had been so bright, so dazzling, that every memory of those years was filled with him like a watermark. That was why seeing him broken afterward was something I could never accept. So I decided to become his knight once again. Watching Christian slowly heal, seeing him rely on me more and more, it made me happier than I ever admitted. But I also had a selfish side, a side I never let anyone see. I wanted Christian to rely on no one but me. The moon finally broke through the last veil of clouds, and the pale light stung my eyes. Judy's hand rested against Christian's Adam's apple. Her lips moved as she spoke. She was probably teaching him how to make sounds, how to feel the vibrations of his vocal cords. I wiped away my tears. Just then, my eyes met Christian's. For the first time ever, I saw panic and uneasiness flicker across his face. Why didn't you wait for me? I secretly wiped away another tear and forced myself to sound casual. Despite everything, there was still an unconscious trace of affection in my voice. Christian was just about to answer, but Judy suddenly let out a small laugh. She stepped in front of him, shielding him without hesitation. It was an unmistakable gesture of protection. Why does it bother you so much whenever someone else gets close to Christian? The truth is, you don't want him to make any other friends. Do you? You think you're helping him? If it weren't for you, Christian would have had a lot more friends by now. She looked completely innocent as she delivered every cruel word. The truth is, you just want to control Christian. You want to be his only friend, so he'll keep revolving around you forever. I wanted to argue. The words were already on the tip of my tongue, but somehow, I couldn't say a single one. I stared at Christian, my eyes burning with tears. Please, just say something. You know that's not true. More than anything, I wanted Christian to tell Judy she was wrong, that she had misunderstood me. But he didn't. His fingers moved through one sign after another. Beside him, Judy smiled with quiet satisfaction. He said, Valeria, I want to try living without you. I stared at the slanting rain outside. Cold spread upward from the soles of my feet. Then I turned around and ran straight into the rain without looking back. From the corner of my eye, I saw Christian instinctively take a step toward me, but Judy caught the edge of his shirt. And once again, after hesitating, he didn't choose me. I told myself, forget it. I don't want to love him anymore. Chapter 5. I didn't go to school the next day. I had a fever. Ignoring the pounding in my head, I found a large cardboard box. I gathered every photo of Christian and me, every gift he'd ever given me since we were children. Then I threw everything into the box. While checking to make sure I hadn't missed anything, my phone lit up. A message from Christian. Did you get sick after being caught in the rain last night? We had math today. I organized the notes for you. I didn't reply. Instead, I slowly flipped through the old desk calendar. 4 months from today would be Christian's final rehabilitation session. It would also be the day the college entrance exams ended. I'd imagined it countless times. After Christian finally regained his voice, what would be the first thing he'd say to me? Before Judy transferred to our school, I'd always believed, without the slightest doubt, that Christian belonged in my future. After all, we'd been together for over 10 years, long enough that I'd almost forgotten the Christian I first met wasn't calm, confident, and quietly dependable like he was now. Back then, he was insecure, sensitive, always afraid of being abandoned. He would cry and beg me not to leave him behind. Even if I had somewhere to go, he'd ask me to tell him in advance. Back then, he never talked about needing personal space. So naturally, I believed we'd go to the same university. I'd stay by his side while he practiced speaking, and we'd have countless tomorrows together. A gust of wind rushed toward me, carrying the earthy scent after the rain. I came back to my senses, then placed the calendar into the box as well. After checking one last time that nothing had been left behind, I carried the box downstairs and threw it into the trash. Another message popped up. Do you want me to bring everything to your house? I couldn't face Christian the way I used to anymore. So, I blocked him. Even though it hurt so much, a thought still crossed my mind. Maybe it would have been better if I'd never met Christian in the first place. Chapter 6. When I walked into the classroom, Judy was sitting at my desk, chatting happily with Christian. Christian looked completely at ease. He sat turned toward her, occasionally signing with relaxed movements, a faint smile lingering on his lips. I paused. Judy noticed me immediately and tilted her head with a bright smile. Sorry, Valeria. This is my seat now. I've only been here for a short time. Besides Christian, I don't really know anyone. She lightly tugged on Christian's sleeve and smiled even wider. And my math isn't very good. So I asked our homeroom teacher if I could switch seats. After all, we're going to the same university. I tightened my grip on my backpack strap and looked straight at Judy. Her voice was gentle. Her expression wasn't. You really do need to improve your grades. I heard you ranked 30th in the class on the last monthly exam. With those scores, you won't even get into college. I rarely spoke so sharply. I'd grown up in a loving, well-off family. My parents adored each other. And even knowing Christian and I were inseparable, they'd always said as long as he didn't bully me, they were happy. Most of the time, I treated everyone with kindness. The first fight I'd ever gotten into had been because someone was bullying Christian. Ignoring Judy's flushed face, I glanced at the empty seat beside the class monitor and started walking toward it. As I passed Christian, he grabbed my arm. He signed, genuine confusion written all over his face. Why did you block me? Aren't we still friends? I lowered my head and gently shook it. Word by word, I answered. I don't want to be your friend anymore. Let's just be strangers. The classroom fell silent. Christian sat frozen in his seat. His face turned pale, and his fingers tightened around my arm until his knuckles turned white. Biting his lip, he signed with difficulty. I thought we'd still be friends. I didn't mean to end our friendship. I remembered what he'd said that day. Then I calmly replied, I need some personal space too. Chapter 7. Over the final 4 months of senior year, stacks of exam papers grew higher and higher on every desk. I stopped paying attention to Christian, how his voice was recovering, which university he planned to attend, what his future looked like. Even as he and Judy became closer every day, I no longer cared. After school, I stayed in the library every evening until it closed. There were so many study rooms, yet somehow, the only unlocked one was that one. And somehow, I pushed that door open. Inside, Judy and Christian were kissing. They were pressed tightly together. Under Judy's foot lay Christian's favorite mystery novel. The book had fallen open, and one of its pages was already beginning to tear. I'd been the one who gave him that book. Back then, Christian had promised he'd treasure it. Because I was the first friend who had ever given him a gift. Actually, I'd given him a whole pile of birthday presents that year. That novel had been buried at the very bottom. I'd even included a book filled with complicated physics and math formulas that I thought he'd enjoy. Inside the last page, I'd hidden a letter. At the time, I was sure Christian would never find it, so I casually told him, "It doesn't really count as a gift. The main character kills a bunch of people. I just wanted to scare you." But the very next day, Christian wrote me back. He said, "I can't imagine my life without you. We'll never be apart." Now, that same book lay beneath Judy's feet, a stepping stone for their romance. I'd walked in so suddenly that both of them froze. Christian hurriedly tried to push Judy away, but Judy grabbed his hand and glared at me. "Enough. Why do you keep haunting Christian wherever he goes? Who do you think you are to him? Does he need your permission just to have a girlfriend?" I swallowed the bitterness rising inside me and glanced at Judy's half-open collar. "I know it's spring, but next time, could you at least close the door? Or is even a cheap motel too expensive for you?" Judy's eyes widened. Her face instantly turned bright red as she hurried to fix her clothes. Christian awkwardly rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked like he wanted to say something. I quickly closed the door and walked away. Chapter 8. Maybe the scene in the library had embarrassed Judy enough. Whenever we crossed paths in the classroom after that, she finally started avoiding me. My study efficiency shot through the roof. I was chewing on the end of my pen, staring at the last impossible math problem. The auxiliary line doesn't go there. The class monitor tapped my test paper and traced a line lightly with his finger. "Draw it here instead. Try again." His voice was calm and clear. "Look, this condition is already given. Set it as X first." His explanations were incredibly organized. Within minutes, he'd finished walking me through the problem and even circled the exact spot where I'd gone wrong. "Did that make sense?" he asked. "Absolutely. It was crystal clear." I gave him a thumbs up. "Thanks, Your Honor, Mr. Class Monitor." Raymond let out a quiet hum before laughing. "We've been desk mates for half a month. Why do you still keep calling me Class Monitor?" "Don't tell me. You seriously don't know my name?" "Of course I did." Raymond was one of the most famous students in school. He was also one of our math teacher's favorites. The school had won 2 medals in the math Olympiad. Christian had taken the gold. Raymond had won bronze. Our math teacher had complained about it for ages, insisting Raymond could have won gold too if he'd taken the competition more seriously. "Of course I know your name." I blinked. "It's just my way of showing respect to a math genius." As far as I knew, Raymond also followed the Olympiad track. Unlike Christian, though, he wasn't weak in any subject. Whenever he took the regular school exams, he was always ranked first. Math genius. "How about I pay the market rate for private tutoring? Will you help me with math?" Raymond burst out laughing. "Valeria, I don't need your money. I'm actually a pretty nice guy. You handed me a bottle of water during the basketball tournament, so I'm returning the favor. I'll tutor you." For some reason, it felt like he deliberately emphasized the words returning the favor. "From now on, call me Raymond. No more Class Monitor." Seriously? Did I just hit the jackpot? Not wanting to waste a second, I immediately pulled out my latest exam papers and spent the entire day pestering Raymond with questions. He flipped through every problem I'd gotten wrong. In almost no time, he'd sorted them into categories. Then he picked one classic example from each type and taught me how to apply the same logic to similar questions. The tangled mess in my head suddenly became crystal clear. "Raymond, you're seriously amazing. I have to buy you dinner." Raymond lowered his eyes with a grin. In an intentionally casual tone, he joked, "Anything I want? Then I'm ordering the most expensive meal you've ever paid for." Just then, Christian walked over holding a notebook. What he saw was Raymond and me both smiling. I was happy because I'd found an incredible tutor. Raymond was happy because he was looking forward to free food. As for Christian, he stood there in front of me. The hand holding out the notebook trembled ever so slightly. "I made math notes for you. I thought you might need them." He unconsciously bit his lip, his fingers tightening around the notebook. To be fair, Christian's notes really were useful. Normally, he never bothered making study notes. He'd only done it because math had always been my weakest subject. He genuinely wanted to help me improve. But I was tired. I only wanted to raise my grades, graduate, and leave this school as quickly as possible. I didn't want to see Christian anymore. I don't need them. The smile disappeared from my face. My voice was cold and flat. Christian froze. For a moment, he looked completely at a loss. Then Judy stepped in again, pointing at me as she snapped. If you don't want them, fine, but you don't have to be so ungrateful. If you hadn't always forced Christian to tutor you before, do you really think he'd have volunteered to make those notes for you? Stop thinking the world revolves around you. You were never worthy of being Christian's friend. Chapter 9. Judy reached for Christian's hand, intending to pull him away, but to everyone's surprise, Christian suddenly shook her hand off. Frowning, he signed rapidly. Valeria, what do you mean? Are you really trying to cut me out of your life? I'm sorry. I should have told you I was going to the hospital that day. But even if you're angry, don't gamble with your future. Don't you want us to go to the same university anymore? For the first time, I looked him straight in the eye, utterly baffled. I said, Christian, who told you I was planning to go to the same university as you? I'm going to college for my own future, not because of you. And besides, Raymond spoke up before Christian could respond. Valeria isn't refusing your notes because she's mad at you. A faint smile tugged at his lips as he glanced at the notebook in Christian's hand. Then he landed a ruthless blow. If you're going to tutor someone, the least you should be able to do is talk. Otherwise, how much can you really teach? What do you think? Christian? It was a cruel thing to say. I'd practiced mute.He since I was little. The last person who mocked Christian like that, I dragged them right in front of him and made them apologize face to face. But this time, I simply looked away. My fingers twitched. I didn't say a word. I wasn't his knight anymore. Judy's face flushed bright red with anger. It reminded me of the day I'd begged Christian to watch a movie with me. She'd looked exactly like this then, standing on the moral high ground, condemning me. You don't get to bully Christian. You grew up together, so that gives you the right to ignore what he wants. You're selfish. You're always trying to control him. So, I expected her to stand up for Christian, to lash out at Raymond. Instead, she dodged the issue completely and shouted at Raymond. So what if your grades are good? Does that make you so amazing? You're defending Valeria. Do you have a crush on her or something? Christian's face turned deathly pale. A moment later, he doubled over in a fit of coughing. His shoulders shook violently. He struggled to catch his breath. He looked like he was in real pain. But no sound came out. Judy was too busy arguing with Raymond to notice. Christian looked at me again. His bloodless lips parted helplessly. His wide eyes trembled behind long lashes. It looked as though tears could spill at any second. I blinked. For a brief moment, I genuinely felt sorry for him. But then, I turned my head away, avoiding his eyes. For the first time, I realized leaving Christian's world was actually that easy. All I had to do was close my eyes, or simply look the other way. Chapter 10. That night, I was still trying to digest everything Raymond had taught me. The blank spaces on my test paper were packed with notes and problem-solving methods he'd written down for me. I buried myself in practice problems of the same type when a flash of lightning suddenly lit up the window. A moment later came a clap of thunder. Rain began falling in soft, steady sheets. I stared at the gloomy sky outside and, for the first time in a while, drifted into a daze. It had been exactly 1 month since the night I ran home in the rain. The city I lived in was rainy to begin with. Now that summer was approaching, it rained every few days, and every time I heard rain against the windows, that same fear, that same heartbreak, came rushing back. I never could understand one thing. Why had Christian believed Judy so easily? I was the one who chased away the kids who bullied him. I was the one who always stood up for him. I was the one who accompanied him to every therapy appointment. I was the one who spent years pulling him out of his shell, helping him become the gentle, confident, sociable person he was today. Fine. Maybe I'd fallen in love with him. Maybe I'd overestimated my place in his life. Maybe I'd crossed boundaries without realizing it. But we'd spent over 10 years growing up side by side. Why couldn't he just tell me? Why did he choose to stand beside Judy and blame me instead? I shook my head. forcing the memories out of my mind. Then I pushed open the window for some fresh air, and that's when I saw him. A lone figure stood downstairs. I had no idea how long he'd been there. Lightning split the sky again. For an instant, it illuminated Christian's pale face. Our eyes met. There was an unmistakable trace of hope in his expression. The night air was cold. His fingers looked stiff as he slowly signed. "Can we talk?" Then he clasped his hands together and gently rocked them back and forth. The meaning couldn't have been clearer. "Please." Chapter 11. This wasn't the first time Christian had been in my room. He used to tutor me here all the time. Back then, my sign language wasn't very good, so we communicated by writing on sheet after sheet of paper. I could never bring myself to throw them away. I'd kept every single one. But now, Christian stood awkwardly in my room, completely at a loss. He slowly looked around, then his eyes suddenly turned red. His hands moved through each sign with painful slowness, as though something had shattered inside him. "Did you put away our photos?" I threw them out. Silence stretched between us. Growing impatient, I asked, "You stood outside in the rain all this time just to ask me that?" Christian started coughing again. Between coughs, he signed. "I'm not dating Judy." I couldn't help laughing. "You were kissing, and you're telling me you're not together? Who exactly do you think you're fooling?" But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore, because I really, truly don't care. Christian pressed his lips together. He looked at me helplessly, his eyes dull as though all their light had faded. At first, I just felt comfortable around Judy. She was quiet. She liked reading Agatha Christie too. She told me you didn't actually like me. She said you were overbearing, that you only treated me well because you pitied me. That day, she said she'd read to me. Halfway through the book, I suddenly thought of you. You used to read to me too. Then, she suddenly leaned in. She said I smelled nice. I didn't move away. By the end, even his signing had grown hesitant, as though he knew how weak his explanation sounded. I laughed quietly. Suddenly, the whole thing felt ridiculous. Boundaries, childhood sweethearts, rescuing each other, ruining each other. None of it mattered anymore. Looking at Christian's tear-filled eyes, I finally reached an honest conclusion. He really was a terrible person. "So, it's all Judy's fault? You came here to tell me you've finally realized the truth? That Judy was the one who destroyed what we had? That you were only misled by her? That you're a victim too?" Christian, if you're really apologizing, then stop dumping all the blame on a girl. Did she force you? Don't you have any judgment of your own? Couldn't you tell the difference between someone caring about you and someone controlling you? Maybe even he realized how hollow his explanation sounded. His lips pressed together again. He could only look at me with despair and helplessness. Watching his familiar little expressions, I no longer felt that quiet pride I once had from always understanding what he meant without words. All that remained was endless exhaustion. I finally said, "You should go, Christian. What we had ended a long time ago. I hope you recover soon." That was the last kindness I had left to give him. Chapter 12. There was only 1 month left until the college entrance exam. The entire class studied like their lives depended on it. Almost every day, our homeroom teacher would passionately declare, "The future isn't decided yet. Any one of us could be the dark horse, like everyone else." I threw myself completely into studying. Every morning, I'd rush into the classroom early with a steamed bun in my mouth. Every night, I'd stay until the classroom lights were turned off. We were still in the same class, so I saw Christian almost every day, but he seemed to have finally given up. He never tried to talk to me again. Even so, I could still feel his gaze on me from time to time, but every time I turned around, he'd quickly look away. Judy, on the other hand, made a point of showing up in front of me more and more often. Every time she passed my desk, she'd deliberately say, "Christian, thanks for the notes. Will you go to the library with me after school?" Christian stayed silent. He never refused. One day, after everyone else had left, only the 3 of us remained in the classroom. Judy asked in a sweet, teasing voice, "Christian, when will you finally be able to talk? Can you say my name first?" I was working on a math problem. The moment those words left her mouth, I could feel an intense stare fixed on me. I still didn't turn around. Instead, I lowered my head and continued working through the conic sections problem in front of me. It was difficult, painfully difficult. Raymond was the first person to notice how tense I'd become. He sent me a message on WeChat. There's still a month until the college entrance exam. You still have plenty of time. If you get stuck on anything, just ask me. You've already improved a lot. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Stick with Raymond, and you'll be just fine. I hesitated before replying. Won't I be taking up too much of your study time? Raymond answered almost immediately. Valeria, I already got admitted through the Olympiad recommendation program. It was announced the same day as your ex. Did you forget? I really had forgotten. Back then, all I could see was Christian. I replied. We never dated. The reply didn't come until much later. Okay. It came with a smiling emoji. Chapter 13. As time passed, my grades steadily climbed. I thought Christian and I had completely become strangers, like two parallel lines that would never cross again. But one afternoon after school, Judy blocked my way outside the classroom. We need to talk. I was honestly getting tired of this. I was on my way to meet Raymond to go over this week's math test. Was I seriously just a supporting character in whatever drama the two of them were acting out? I'm busy. We have nothing to talk about. Judy glared at me unwillingly, resentment written all over her face. What exactly did you do to Christian? Why can't he stop thinking about you? I'm the one who's by his side now. She took a step closer. You must be loving this. Huh, Valeria. He's practically depressed because of you. He hasn't even been paying attention to me these past few days. I honestly don't understand how someone as controlling as you can make Christian so miserable. He's handsome, kind, and brilliant. You never deserved to be his childhood friend. She kept talking without stopping, as if I'd committed some unforgivable crime against Christian, as if she were some righteous heroine standing up for the person she loved. Finally, she shot me another glare full of jealousy. If I'd met Christian before you, you never would have had a chance. I smiled. I had no intention of explaining anything to Judy, but if she really had met Christian before I did, she probably would have run away. She was obsessed with the Christian who had already stepped out of the darkness and into the sunlight, and she envied the fact that I'd once been the person he cared about most. So when she approached Christian, it wasn't just because she liked him. There was also a sense of superiority. She believed she was rescuing him from me. In her mind, she was the gentle, understanding one. I was the overbearing villain. She placed herself firmly on the side of justice, convincing herself she was saving Christian while slowly twisting everything I'd ever done into something ugly. It was an incredibly clumsy attempt at manipulation. But Christian believed her. Judy probably thought she could provoke me by attacking my weakest spot. The problem was, I had absolutely no interest in discussing one person I disliked with another person I disliked just as much. So I simply smiled, then agreed with her. You're right. If only you'd met Christian first. With that, I turned around and walked away. Then, I saw a familiar figure. Christian stood not far away. I had no idea how long he'd been listening. His hands were clenched so tightly they trembled. His eyes were red. I only glanced at him once. Then I looked away and kept walking. That little incident barely stirred my emotions. After I got home, I grabbed a steamed bun from the dining table and headed straight to my room. I spread out my notebook of corrected mistakes beneath my desk lamp, pen in one hand, steamed bun in the other. I scribbled notes while eating as fast as I could. A message from Raymond popped up. I found another set of mock exams. I've already worked through them. The questions are excellent. He sent me the entire paper. There were only 15 days left until the college entrance exam. I was going to get into a great university. No one was going to shake my resolve. Chapter 14. That morning, I walked into school with a piece of bread in my mouth, still replaying yesterday's math problems in my head. Raymond took my backpack right off my shoulders. His eyes landed on the dark circles under mine. I shouldn't have sent you that practice exam last night. He sighed before pulling out a carton of milk from his pocket. Here, can you promise me you'll actually get some sleep tonight? The exam isn't even here yet. Don't wear yourself out first. I accepted the milk and immediately launched into yesterday's paper. Those questions were amazing. Where did you even find that exam? But there are still a few problems I can't figure out. Can you go over them with me? Raymond nodded. I immediately clasped my hands dramatically. Seriously, I'm so lucky to have you. The university Raymond had been admitted to through the Olympiad recommendation program was one of the top 2 in our city. Grinning, I said, then I'll just have to overperform and become your classmate. He suddenly started coughing. Even the tips of his ears turned an unmistakable shade of red. Completely confused, I hurriedly handed him some water. Easy, catch your breath. Just then, Judy walked past us with a cold snort. The hallway was wide enough for several people, yet she deliberately slammed her shoulder into mine. I wasn't expecting it. If Raymond hadn't reacted fast enough to catch me, I would have crashed straight into a desk. What are you doing? Raymond looked directly at her. Judy spread her hands innocently. Oops. I lost my balance. She was apologizing, but the smug look on her face told a completely different story. Raymond looked ready to say something else. I stopped him. Forget it. Class was about to start. With the college entrance exam just around the corner, I wanted nothing to do with Judy. But that day, she seemed obsessed with provoking me. Her hostility practically overflowed. When I was asking a teacher a question, she just happened to walk by and sneer. Some people really love putting on a show. I guess working this hard means you're aiming for the nation's top university. Later, while I was getting water, somehow her cup splashed all over my exam paper. Even worse, I exchanged a few words with a class representative from another class. The next thing I heard was Judy whispering to someone nearby, loud enough for everyone to hear. She's been flirting with every guy lately. Must be spring fever. That was it. I'd had enough. I grabbed the thick dictionary off my desk and hurled it straight at her. Then I warned her coldly. Judy, I've trained in mute.He since I was a kid. If you keep spreading lies about me, next time it won't be a book. Judy's face instantly turned white. She muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't make out the words. Later, I found out Christian had broken up with her. She couldn't take her anger out on him, so she'd been taking it out on me instead. I'd reached my limit. That night, I called Christian. It was the first time I'd contacted him since everything fell apart. He answered almost immediately. I took a deep breath. Christian, could you please stay away from me? Better yet, disappear from my life. Do you know I hate you? I've already told you we're over. So why are you and Judy still haunting me? You're the one who hurt me. What did I ever do wrong? I just want to study in peace. I want to stay as far away from you crazy people as possible. I've wanted to tell you this for a long time. I regret meeting you, more than anything. That night, I finally let everything out. Christian listened to every word. He never hung up. On the other end of the line, the only thing I could hear was the sound of someone trying desperately to hold back their breathing. Suddenly, I lost all interest. I hung up. After all, what was the point of arguing with someone who couldn't even answer back? Chapter 15. 15 days flew by. Before I knew it, the college entrance exam had arrived. It rained heavily that day. For some reason, every answer came to me effortlessly. My thoughts flowed without interruption. The more questions I solved, the more familiar they felt. The more I wrote, the more confident I became. When I finally walked out of the exam hall, I let out a long breath. The past 3 years suddenly felt unreal. Time had slipped away far too quickly. Raymond was waiting for me outside. He was holding a bouquet of flowers. Valeria, we're finally free. Smiling, he handed me the bouquet before casually ruffling my hair. Aren't you going to ask how I did? I took the flowers and breathed in their fragrance. I trust you, but since you clearly want me to ask, I'll ask. So, how did you do? Pretending to be annoyed, I lightly punched him on the shoulder before breaking into a grin. If nothing unexpected happens, we'll probably be at the same university, and even survive freshman military training together. Raymond's eyes immediately lit up. His happiness was impossible to hide. He reached over to take my backpack. Now that we're finally free, would you do me the honor of having dinner with me? He looked down at me. His long eyelashes cast soft shadows beneath his amber eyes. Only then did I realize Christian wasn't the only guy with ridiculously long eyelashes. Why are you staring at me like that? Looking into his amber eyes, I answered honestly. I just realized. You're actually better looking than Christian. The tips of Raymond's ears turned slightly red. And suddenly, I felt awkward too. Wait, why had the atmosphere become so weird? Why had Raymond suddenly gone quiet? I desperately wished something would interrupt the silence. As if on cue, a hoarse voice came from behind me. Every word sounded painfully forced. I'm so RRY. Vale. I froze, then spun around. Christian was standing there. I had no idea how long he'd been listening. His eyes were red. He wasn't holding an umbrella. He was completely soaked. Rainwater streamed down his hair and clothes. He looked exhausted, broken. The words "I'm sorry" came out with obvious difficulty. But when he said Vale, it came out effortlessly, as though he'd practiced saying it thousands of times in private. The wind howled between us as we looked at each other. His eyes drifted to the bouquet in my arms. Embarrassment washed over his face. He lowered his head, biting his pale lips so hard they turned completely white. He looked like he was crying. At that moment, his face began to blur in my vision. The boy from 3 years ago, the one whose eyes sparkled whenever he smiled at me, the one who had written "I missed you" across my palm, the one who had promised me with complete sincerity, "Valeria, you'll be the first person to hear my voice." I did hear it, but the first words he spoke to me weren't "I love you." They weren't "Let's go to the same university." They were "I'm sorry." Chapter 16. A month later, I got exactly what I'd hoped for. I was admitted to T University, one of the city's top 2 universities. The day we went to collect our admission letters, Judy was there too. She had done terribly on the exam. Her grades had dropped so much that she ended up at a local private junior college. Her eyes were red. Even as she walked out after collecting her paperwork, she deliberately bumped into me. "Don't look so pleased with yourself. My life isn't defined by one exam." Even on her way out, she still had to make one last attempt to disgust me. Raymond patted me on the shoulder with his usual laid-back grin. "Vale, you know what? A good junior college isn't necessarily worse than a top university. We should be congratulating Judy." Judy left with a dark expression. Chapter 17. I didn't find out Christian hadn't gone to university until I was preparing to move in. He'd gotten sick again. On the phone, Christian's mother cried so hard she could barely breathe. He'd already been admitted through the Olympiad recommendation program. He'd even been practicing speaking every day. I really thought he'd fully recovered. But that day, I only asked him one question. "Are you and Vale going to university together?" After that, he stopped talking again. I thought he just didn't want to speak. But today I accidentally broke a glass. I turned around to clean it up. And Christian, he walked barefoot right onto the broken pieces. I was so terrified that I rushed him to the hospital. She sobbed for a long time before finally managing to continue. "The doctor said his condition has gotten much worse. Forget university. He can't even manage daily life anymore. He needs someone to take care of him all the time." At the end of the call, she hesitantly asked if I would come visit Christian. After thinking about it, I agreed. What I didn't expect was to see Judy there too. She was wearing a white dress, sitting beside Christian's hospital bed. She gently read a novel aloud to him. Every so often, she'd glance up, hoping for some reaction, but all she saw was a beautiful doll without a soul. Christian didn't speak. He didn't react. Nothing. Growing anxious, Judy reached for his hand. "It's me, Judy. We're friends. Don't you remember me?" She reached toward his Adam's apple, as if trying to awaken a forgotten memory. "I taught you how to speak that rainy day." Before she could finish, Christian shoved her away in panic. A hoarse, broken cry escaped his throat. Judy froze. She stared blankly at the unfamiliar Christian before her. Then Christian suddenly started throwing things. The stuffed animal, the fruit, the pillow, everything within reach. He hurled them all at Judy like someone completely out of control. Judy stood there, whispering to herself, "No, this isn't right. This isn't how it was supposed to be." When she noticed me, she instinctively turned her face away. She had once told me, The only reason she'd lost was because she'd met Christian after I did. Looking at her reddened eyes now, I suddenly wanted to ask her, "Do you regret it?" Our eyes met briefly. Neither of us spoke. As she walked past me to leave, she quietly whispered, "I'm sorry. I never went over to see Christian." The reason sounded like something straight out of a melodrama. I was afraid that he'd suddenly recognize me, then cry, and beg me to stay with him forever. I really am a kind person, but this time, begging wouldn't change anything. Deep down, I had the feeling that fate had finally returned to the path it was always meant to follow. Chapter 18. In the distance, the setting sun painted the outlines of the buildings in glowing shades of bronze and gold. The trees swayed gently, weaving patches of dappled light across the ground. All at once, I remembered, many years ago, beneath a sunset just like this one, I had learned how to sign "I'll stay with you." Nervous and hopeful, I signed it to Christian for the very first time. He cried. The sunset reflected in his misty eyes that day was more beautiful than any scenery I had ever seen. When I told Raymond about that memory, he slowly pried open the fist I hadn't realized I'd been clenching. He gently held my wrist. His voice was unusually serious. "Stop being so hard on yourself." After that, Raymond comforted me for a while. Little by little, his usual carefree attitude returned. Then, with obvious meaning behind his words, he said, "I think you've just seen too little of the world." I looked up at him. His eyes darted everywhere, anywhere except mine. "You're right." As I'd hoped, a faint blush slowly spread behind his ears.